Hello, legends, and welcome to episode 18 of Triumph Beyond Trauma. It is my absolute pleasure to be here with you today. Last week on June 27 was PTSD Awareness Day, and it gave me a moment to reflect on my why I'm here, and what I hope to achieve out of it all. And it ended up being pretty simple. I just want to help, and I want to do that by helping to increase the mental health literacy of first responders, veterans, and frontline workers. The more we know, the better that we can be, right? I hope that by doing this, whether it's through this podcast, my social media accounts, or my program, the First Responder Mental Wellness Method, that the stigma in relation to having, seeking help for, and actively working on mental illness changes. Because let's be real, it bloody needs to. I want to empower people to stand up for themselves and to know that it is completely and unashamedly okay to not be okay. And whether that is for a short time or a longer period of time, it's okay. But let's get you the support that you need to get you back on track, having good days again. I encourage you, if you have a little spark of light to share, to get in touch with your mates, your loved ones, and to support them however you can. Today, I am having a chat with Trudie Marie. Trudie describes herself as an ordinary woman who feels like she's led an extraordinary life. Trudie raised 2 children solo who have grown into lovely young adults fulfilling on their dreams. And she's been married twice. Her American husband and her currently live in regional Western Australia, about 4 hours from Perth, with their 2 dogs. Trudie has spent the past 2 years discovering who she really is after being diagnosed with post-traumatic stress and going through the process of being medically retired from the West Australia Police. Trudie explored a number of modalities as part of her recovery journey, which included hiking the 1,000-kilometre Bibbulmun Track solo over 9 weeks. Prior to being a police officer, she worked in many different industries, adding significant value to organisations cultivating positive community relationships to bring about progressive change. Trudie's experiences have taught her it's not just about being a survivor in this lifetime, but about reviving, blooming, and flourishing to live a life she loves. I can't wait for you to listen to this one, so let's get into it. Welcome to Triumph Beyond Trauma, the podcast that explores journeys of resilience and hope. I'm Rosie Skeen, a yoga and breathwork teacher and founder of Tactical Yoga Australia. As a former soldier's wife, mum to 3 beautiful kids, and a medically retired New South Wales police officer with PTSD, I understand the challenges of navigating mental health in the first responder and veteran community. Join us for incredible stories from individuals who've confronted the depths of mental illness and discovered their path to happiness and purpose, as well as solo episodes and expert discussions. Together, we'll uncover the tools to help you navigate your journey toward a brighter, more fulfilling life. Whether you're looking for helpful insights, practical tips, or just a friendly reminder that you're not alone, Triumph Beyond Trauma has got your back. You matter, and your journey to a happier, more meaningful life starts right here. Trudie, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for joining me today.
You're welcome. It's a privilege to be here.
I would love to start with wherever you would like to start in your journey with West Australia Police.
Correct.
So I'd love to know, how that came about for you.
So it came about in, I'm going to say around 2013, 2014. I was participating in some professional development at the time. And one of the things that came to me was that I'd had this childhood dream of when I was about 10 or 11, living next door to police officers in this small country town, and I wanted to be him. And he had said to me at the time, it's not a job for women. And going back to the early 80s, it probably wasn't. And he wasn't saying it in a detrimental way. It was that he was looking at this young girl, quite innocent, quite naive, and he's like, I don't want to expose you to whatever we're dealing with. But I took that to mean that I wasn't good enough. And that's had a profound impact on my life. But I watched a whole bunch of people growing up, like once I became an adult, watching all of my friends join and different people in my life join. And I went to, I think, about ceremonies, just never my own. And so after doing this professional development and turning 40, was probably the crux of like, you know what? No one's going to tell me I can't do this. I'm going to do it. So I didn't tell my family, which was one of the first times in my life I've ever not told my family what I'm doing or asked for their permission or approval. I literally just told my kids. I said, "This is something I'm going to do. I know you're teenagers, but is this going to be okay?" And they're like, "Yeah, go for it, Mum." So I did. I set about training and set about applying. And then in 2016, I was accepted in. I did get back squatted due to an injury. So I was delayed about 6 months in starting. But my time was my time in April of 2016.
So where did you go? And like, I don't know much about West Australia Police. Is there a training facility in Perth or?
It is. It's in Joondalup in the northern suburbs, and it's a 28-week course. So I started in April and graduated at the end of October. And yeah, it was pretty full on. It was one of the most intense periods of my life of what the hell am I doing? But I got through it, and I was very keen and eager to get going and live this childhood dream.
Yeah. And how was your dream? Where did you end up out of college?
So straight from the academy, I ended up on the booze bus, which
Oh, yeah.
is what everybody hates. But I actually really enjoyed it because at the academy, you don't learn too much about road policing. It's kind of a gloss over. And so to spend that time actually learning, and I was because I was a mature recruit, I spent a lot of time, talking with the older senior connies and the sergeant and building relationships with them to learn. So I actually really enjoyed that experience. I was there for about 6 months, I think, and then went to, at the time, UA Police was divided into two divisions, response and local policing. So one team would go out and attend the jobs and the other team would actually investigate down the track. So I was sent to Northwest Metro Response, which was a large area of the northern suburbs, pretty much my backyard in the sense of where I'd lived with my parents and where I was living with my kids. I knew that area like the back of my hand. So that proved great when you were driving to jobs because I never read the map. I'd just be like, go here, go here, go here.
Yeah.
Which made life heaps easy for me because I felt like I know the area. I just need to now deal with the job. So that was cool. I was there for about, I'm going to say close on 12 months. And then an opportunity came up. I was one of those people, the nerds, that would read the job opportunities because I wanted to see what movement there was and who was going where. And I also used to read the Gazette every week. And people are like, why? And I'm like, because it's all part of the learning. I was thriving on all this new information. So I'd seen a job advertised for a project and I was like, so prior to being a police officer, I was a jack or Jill of all trades. I'd worked in multiple different industries and to management level, like the largest team I've ever led is about 70 odd people. And then I was a property manager as well at one stage. So I had a portfolio of about 100 houses. So I was used to dealing with, 100 houses, 100 tenants, 100 owners. So about 300 people. So the management stuff didn't bother me at all. In fact, that was probably what I was good at. And so I took this project. It's like, I want to know a bit more about this. And I misread the ad because I thought it started at the end of my probation. So I was like, you know what, I'll apply anyway. And I sent an email to the sergeant and he actually called me back going, one, like, thank you, but two, why is a probie like asking to be on this project? And I said, well, I'm not a 20-something-year-old probie. I'm a 40-year-old probie who has an experience of management and training and leadership, and it seems what this project is about, and I'd love to know more from the other side. But he said, look, apply. So I did, and they wouldn't accept the application, and so I applied again, and they still wouldn't accept it. So I'd sent it to him anyway, directly, because he'd asked for it, and so he had that submission, and then it was approved, like I was to get the job. And then probational development wouldn't actually release me. So it took an assistant commissioner to actually email and go, you will transfer this constable straight away. And so I ended up on this project, which literally sent me around the state of WA, training officers way more superior than me, which obviously I got questioned about because it's like, blank shoulders, no stride. Why are you training me? And I said, don't shoot the messenger. I may not know about policing yet or enough about policing, but I know how to train and manage. And right now, could you get up and do my job of standing in front of all of you and train all of you? And they're like, no. I said, well, that's what my skill is in this case. So don't shoot the messenger. And it was really cool because then when I finished that project and went to a station, I actually had the senior sergeant of the station constantly ask me questions about, is this right? Is this how we read it and stuff? And I was like, yeah, you know what? This is my skill set. Your skill set's over there. Let's learn from each other. So that was a really awesome part of my career. And then the 2 years I spent at that station was also brilliant. I had an amazing team. I had a sergeant who'd been a detective, so he was able to train me a lot more on that side of things. So my investigative skills became better and more clarified. And I just really enjoyed getting to know the job. And then my husband joined because we'd met and he was kind of living vicariously through me and decided that he would join the job as well. So he had joined and graduated, and then we decided to go regional. And so we went to our first regional location, which was actually my home, when I say my hometown, it was the town I was born in, but it was also in the Goldfields region, which is where I grew up. So I felt like I was going back to somewhere vaguely familiar. And for my husband, he just wanted out of the city anyway. So he was a country boy as well. So that's what we did. And for the first 12 months, I absolutely loved it. And it was brilliant. And then that's when I hit my roadblocks.
Okay. How remote was the town?
So it is 8 hours from Perth.
Oh, yeah.
And it's 6 hours from Perth to Kalgoorlie, and then it's another 2 hours north to get to Leonora.
Wow. And what's the population then?
So it varies because it's a mining town as well. So there can be a little bit higher population living there. So I think it's about, I want to say 1,500 maybe. But there's a fluctuating population on top of that that's related to mining.
Yeah. So you and your husband were both policing the town?
Correct. There was 8 officers, so 7 officers and a sergeant who was OIC of the station. And yeah, so there was us and 6 others basically.
Yeah. Okay. I have also worked in a remote town and it had about 2,300 people. But at the time I don't even know how many cops were there, maybe 30? It could have been more. It was a main station for the area. But to have just 7 people there, that's not many.
Yeah, and it probably does need more because it is a highly volatile town. It's half Indigenous, half Caucasian working. And it's also a 3-ways from Kalgoorlie, then up north, heading north into the Pilbara, and then heading east out to the lands. So it's very, very transient, different number of people at any one time. I know my husband and I have just been through there in the last couple of days as coming back from holidays, and they'd had 3 funerals and had another 2 coming up, all Indigenous. And so the fluctuation of people coming in and out of town is just incredible. And yeah 7 or 8 people is not enough.
No, and those funerals can be massive.
They're huge.
They're huge. Big celebrations too afterwards, which you definitely need some police around for.
Yeah, and because of the lack of transport too, is that people can come in from off the lands or from surrounding towns. And if the bus only goes through once a week, they're coming in a week before and staying a week after or things like that. So it's not like it's just in town for one day and gone again. They're in town for a while, and the more people you have, the more alcohol there is, the more volatile the situation becomes. So yeah, ends up being crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I've definitely dealt with my fair share of those sort of situations. So what happened for you out there?
So it took until after I left there for me to be diagnosed with PTS. But prior to that, so literally on the first day of going to the town, I had a female officer who was set to work with us for the day and introduce us to the town. say some personal stuff, like she'd heard some stuff about me and it was all negative. And I was like, one, why are you saying this stuff to me? Two, why are you saying it to me on the first day, like, of meeting me? But three, more importantly, was like, who the hell has been saying stuff about me? Because I'd just come from this team that was really close-knit, really amazing. So who was talking out of school? Who had a beef with me? So that made me really start to internalize and look at, what's been going on. And I lacked confidence straight away. But as far as the job goes, I was also like right into it, because this was my chance to actually make my mark and do my thing and police the way I wanted to police, because I loved the idea of community policing. So I also set about getting to know the town, getting to know the structure and the hierarchy of the people in the town. Because obviously, as you would know from working with Indigenous, is that everybody's mother, brother, uncle, aunt, whatever, but you need to actually know who belongs to who. So I spent time doing that and mapping it out, and I had a map in the station and a spreadsheet of who was related to who and who to call on for different people. And the senior officers didn't like it. They're like, oh, you don't need that. It's a waste of time. I said, it might be a waste of time for you, but not for me. This is how I'm getting to know the town. And then the other thing I did was that I approached the Shire, because obviously in a town like that, there's no postal delivery. So there's no post boxes or like mailboxes on the street. So you didn't know what house was what. And as new officers trying to get to know it, I was like, why is there no marking on the curb? So I approached the sergeant. He said, I don't want a bar of it. You go to the Shire. So I did. I went to the Shire, explained the situation and said, it's not just for our benefit, it's for the paramedics as well. Can we have the curb marking done, and can we have it glow in the dark so that we can see it at night time? And it was done. So that pissed a couple of senior officers off as well, because they're like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. And I'm like, whatever, you just are jealous because you didn't think of it. And then I started to get to know the elders. So when we'd first moved into the town, there was a funeral, and one of the liaison officers I spoke with, and I said to her, look, I was born in this town, and I was also delivered by an Aboriginal midwife. And I said, so I have connections to the town. She said, use it. Use it, because you are not just then a white copper coming into this, like a city copper coming in and trying to pull their weight. You are from here. So I did that, and the response from the elders was amazing. Like they realized that I was exactly that. I was from the land. I was caring about them. I wanted to do things good ways, and I was getting amazing response for them. Like they were calling me and be like, oh, can you come and sort this out? Or can you come and do this? And can you come and have a chat to this person? And that's what my husband and I started doing. So we had built a great rapport, and I could literally go out into the community and I'd call on them on the day shift, just dropping in and speaking to the elders, but getting all the gossip as well, so you knew what was going on in your town.
Yeah.
And then I also did that with the two pubs. I created relationships with the two publicans. I worked out how much alcohol was going out into the community. Especially if I was on an afternoon shift, I'd be monitoring, so that I could say, right, we're going to either have a good night or a bad, depending on what alcohol is in the town. And people come to know that about me. And so I was just creating this best possible situation in a really volatile town. And so, yeah, one, that pissed off a few of the senior officers there, including this first female. And then it kind of then changed. So she left, but then another guy came in, and he was the same way. He started policing very much of a us against them mentality, and doing a couple of things that I didn't really like, but I was like, well, that's him, not me. And then I happened to make a comment to him about some other officers I knew, because they worked at the same station that he had at one stage, and they just had a baby. So I'd said, like, this couple have just had a baby. Did you hear the news? And for whatever reason on his part, he took that to mean something completely different about maybe what I knew about him from a previous station or something, and literally turned against me. And I'm talking covert filming. I'm talking not telling me about jobs. I'm like ostracizing me and not talking to me about or at all, not handing over on shift. Talking to my husband, who was a probationer at the time, and I was a first class, and he was telling like my husband what was going on, but not me, and little things like that. But then it started infiltrating into the community, and he was trying to turn the community against me, both elders and business owners. And it got to the point where I was literally just going to work worried and anxious. I even had another officer who at the time was not kitting up properly. So I would be the only female or the only officer on duty like kitted up. And if we had to go to a job, he would either not be kitted up or only half kitted up. So that made me feel unsafe because, you know, he wasn't doing the right thing. And the sergeant wasn't doing anything about it either, because I was telling the sergeant what was going on, but he wasn't enforcing him to kit up. And so if I wasn't going to work extremely anxious, I was going home from work in tears.
Mhm.
And it got so bad that I said to my husband, we have to get out. I can't continue working and living in this way. This is not good for my mental health. So we set about asking for a transfer, which we got, but then the transfer process took about 12 weeks, which is double the length of time it's supposed to take. But this was right at sort of during COVID, and, you know, transport and transfers were, while they were done on paper, the logistics of getting it done was different. And so within that 6 months, or that 12 weeks, of getting the transfer, we had a string of jobs that was just, any one of those on their own probably would have been enough to cause a little bit of PTS. But given that my mental health was already so low, and then having this string of really severe jobs in that time, you know, including like attempted suicides and a near fatal road accident that I actually had to help save the lady, it made things really difficult. So by the time we did move to the next location, I was like, I'm out of here. Let's go. Let's start afresh. I wasn't even dealing with all the crap, but I was like, let's just go. But by the time I got to that station, my name was already mud. Like any agency grapevine, people had started talking, people had heard shit, and the reception I got in comparison to my husband was completely different.
Yeah.
So I further spiraled downwards and end up having the breakdown that I was trying to avoid by leaving. So it was not good.
Yeah. It's horrible. Something that I think about policing is the job's great. Like, I loved the job.
Me too.
And I, like you, I really enjoyed the community policing, especially I did, 90% of my career in the bush out west in New South Wales, and I loved it. I loved the people. I loved locking up crooks. But for me too, it was the internal stuff that tipped me over the edge as well. And it's such a sad thing that I just don't know why. I don't know why people are like that, especially within that organization, because it can work so much better when you work together. And I think it's because some people feel threatened by someone that actually tries and is doing a good job. A similar thing happened to me as acting sergeant. And, I sent out a few emails, you need to do this, we need to do that. And then other sergeants would go to me, whoa, that's a bit much. And I'm like, oh, it's on the checklist that we've got to do these things. And they just don't like it. And then it filters down into other people as well. So it really sucks. And I feel for you.
Yeah, it does. And what frustrates me more than anything is that they promote this whole thin blue line and the blue family, and we support one another. And it's, excuse my French, it's a fucking crock of shit, because it is literally all for one another, and they will look for promotion and walk over whoever they want to get promoted. They will do their own thing to make it advantageous to themselves. And they definitely do not like women. If you get a boys' club, they will literally single out that female, which is what happened to me. There was 3 guys, a 4th and 5th on the verge, but there were 3 main males that literally kind of ganged up on me, and the sergeant didn't do anything. And even when it came to going and fronting the medical board and talking about my career and talking about it, once I started and sat down and wrote which I couldn't do until after the Bib track, I sat down and wrote a statement, but my statement was like a high school essay, wasn't formulated like a normal police statement.
Yeah.
But it was something like, I don't know, nearly 20,000 words or something about my whole experience, because what I realized is that there was this underlying sentiment of bullying and harassment done at various levels in various ways throughout my whole time. Like even working on the project that I'd worked on, I had an officer say to me, "Oh, you're that officer that had the affair at the academy." And I'm like, "I'm sorry, what?" Like, you don't even know me from a bar of soap and you're believing some gossip. And I'm like, God, if that type of gossip's out there about me, like, what the hell? So I'd already started to encounter that kind of stuff. And then at other stations, like, there were just particular males that would do certain shit and they were like, "Oh, that's just him." Actually, no, that's not okay. Like, it's not just him. That needs to be ruled out. And it never is. And it gets put under the carpet. So fronting the medical board with that statement, and they said to me, "Could you not become like a civilian officer and like still work within the agency?" And I'm like, "You find me a place in the agency that my name isn't mud, and I will gladly do that. But the thing I think you're going to struggle with is that I'm never going to be able to go anywhere without my name being mud. And so that's going to cause constant mental anguish for the rest of my career. Like, this is not possible."
Doesn't it? Like that little bit of mud.
Yes.
Yeah. So what did you do when you left? Because you'd transferred to a new place with your husband.
Yeah, so I lasted there about 3 months
Yeah.
before actually having the breakdown I was trying to avoid. And I went on leave. Like, I literally had a breakdown at work, found myself literally on the floor in the female toilets crying on a shift and going, "I'm not in a good place. I need some help." And, excuse me, the doctor I went to said, "You are showing clear signs of PTS. I need to get you to Perth to a psychiatrist as soon as possible." So unfortunately, I had to wait a couple of weeks to do that. Managed to get into a psychologist prior to that. And then the beginning of 2022, I was admitted to Perth Clinic for 2 weeks as an outpatient, dealing with some stuff there. So that's how serious it got. And I know that I'm nowhere near means having, there are other people worse than me out there, but in my circumstances, that was part of my rock bottom.
Yeah. I think something that a lot of, especially cops, do is we always think that someone's always got it worse than us. And, maybe it's not that bad. I think, when you are at that stage where you're like, this is not good, this is not normal for me, it is that bad. Other people's stories might look different, but, we're allowed to accept that things aren't going well for us.
Yeah, and I think I really actually sort of gained that clarification in my so I've only just I was medically retired in March. I had my final morning tea get together, whatever, in June. And I was literally the youngest career of everybody. And I was the youngest person as well. And looking at these people who'd done 20, 30 years, even like 15 years plus within the agency. And part of me felt like a real rookie that I almost feel ashamed that I'm being medically retired out after 8 years when these people have done like 20 and 30. But they came up to me at the end, because in giving our little speeches, I broke down and I said, "I've had a career cut short and I'm devastated that I will never fulfill on my potential in the agency because it's been cut short." And they said to me, "Good on you for actually speaking up now and not waiting 20 or 30 years to be medically retired out, because once it happened, it's with you. Like, the PTS will be with you and then you're dealing with it." And like, one of the guys who had joined quite young said, it becomes normal because you're doing the job every day and you're doing it day in, day out, that those things just become like And it almost snowballs to the effect where it gets to 30 years and you're screwed. And he said, you're actually getting out now after 8 years because you've recognized it straight away and you've done something about it. And he said, so kudos to you for doing that. So I looked at that and went, you know what? Yeah, this is my story. This is how it's happened for me. I wish it had never happened that way, but I got the help when I needed it without ruining the rest of my life and without getting heavily involved into, drugs, alcohol, gambling, all the negative downward spiral paths that you could go through.
Yeah. I had a conversation with a friend recently about exactly that. Having a career that's long, and the older you get, the more of those little symptoms that come into your life that you don't really recognize because it just becomes a part of you. And I think it's so prevalent in people with an extensive service period. And as well as that, there was no mental health literacy, right, in those early days for those officers either. And the guilt and shame would have been there. A lot more shame than what there is now about speaking up, even though I know it's still a lot of lip service from organizations, but there is that little bit more education out there and people speaking up about what symptoms look like and how they can present differently in different people. So I think you're right, and those guys are right that you spoke to, that sometimes it just becomes who you are until it's so bad that unfortunately it's no good at all. And they have lost whatever future they might have had at retirement after they get to their 25, 30, 40 years. They're cooked.
Yeah, and I think looking at some of the people that I spoke to that day, there were 5 of us in total, and you could really see it on their faces and on their families' faces that this has really taken a toll on everybody.
Yeah.
And I know it took a toll on my family. I mean, at my worst, I became I was diagnosed with manic depressive order as well. And I became agoraphobic. I couldn't leave my house. I could barely get out of bed, let alone leave the house. And so for me to walk the bib track, that was a huge step back to getting me on the right road to recovery. Because, I lost every sense of thing. I wasn't showering. I look back at that time and go, wow, Trudie, what the hell? Because it was such a deep, dark place. Where did I go? What did I do? Who did I become in that period? And my family were really worried about me. And, getting myself out of that is probably one of my greatest achievements. And the bib track started that, but turning it around and going, no, I'm not going to let this destroy the rest of my life. I'm not even 50 yet. I don't want to spend the next 20, 30 years in the worst place of my life. I'd much rather be celebrating life.
Yeah. Something that I think we both share is that we're both unmedicated for our mental illnesses. Is that true?
Yes, I refused medication. I was like, nope, that's a Band-Aid fix. To be honest, I don't even take Panadol and Nurofen. I don't even take that side of medication. So there was no way that I was going to be put on these drugs that were going to make me numb. I wanted to get to the bottom of it and learn to deal with it. So that's when I started exploring a whole bunch of other modalities, everything from I did deep self-hypnosis, I did kinesiology, I did a lot of yoga, meditation, breath work. I did ice baths, and then I just got out into nature and walked and just, grounded.
Is the bib track the Bibbulmun Track?
The Bibbulmun Track.
Yeah, Bibbulmun, is it?
Yeah, so it goes from Kalamunda in the Perth Hills down to Albany on the south coast.
Wow.
And according to the halfway point, it says 501 kilometres either way. So it's about 1,002 kilometres. There's been a couple of new diversions or new changes to the track. So I don't know if that's added or taken away some of the distances, but it's 1,000 Ks.
And you just walked it?
Yeah.
Did you do any training for that?
I did. So the whole thing started with me rewatching Wild with Reese Witherspoon.
Okay.
So the story of Cheryl Strayed hiking the PCT. And I'd seen it when it first came out, and obviously it was just a movie. But when I watched it again with my husband, so this is going back probably September, October of 22, I said to my husband, she's on a mental health journey. This would be good for me. I think I'm going to do it. And he's like, what? Hike the PCT? And I was like, not a chance. I said, maybe something a little bit closer to home. And so the Bib Track was it. And he's like, how much are you going to do? And I'm like, the whole thing. And that was so far beyond me because I'd only ever hiked like day hikes. My regular hike on the West Coast is about 10, 11 Ks.
Yeah.
So I was used to doing that. And I'd done a couple of 15K like bigger hikes in the bush and stuff, but I'd never overnight hiked. I'd never camped. I hate camp. Still hate camping. And I had no gear. So I literally had to research and buy everything and, start training. Didn't train enough.
Yeah.
That, not enough leg work. But, I just basically set a date. This is when I'm starting and
Wow.
I did it.
How long did it take?
I did it in 64 days. So I had a rest day in every track town, which people choose to or not choose to. It's entirely up to them. But I wanted to look after me and my body and I wanted an out
Yeah.
in case I had to leave the track for whatever reason. So, I had a rest day in every track town. So there's, I think there's about 7 or 8 along the way.
Okay. That doesn't seem like enough for me.
No, the hardest week was probably the first week in the sense of I started on my period, so all I wanted to do was curl up in a ball anyway. It was still quite warm, and I realised how unfit and carrying my near 20-kilo pack was going to be more arduous than I actually thought.
Yeah. How many kilometers is that a day then?
You end up averaging around 20. Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, so some shorter days, some longer days, but on average, you're doing about 20.
And did you have a support crew to meet you up in those towns and refuel, or you just literally just did it all by yourself?
I did it all by myself. So what I did was prior to starting the track, I actually cooked, dehydrated and vacuum packed probably about 90% of my food, so lunches and dinners. And then I created these little resupply boxes and I spent one day driving from Perth to Denmark to drop off all the boxes along the way so that I had them at the visitor centre when I arrived. And the only time I didn't was in Walpole. My husband came and met me before he flew home to the States while I was on the track. And then in the longest section, there's a section from Kalamunda to Dwelling Up. It was the opposite for me, but it's 200 Ks with no town, no nothing in between. So you need what they call a track angel to deliver your stuff. So hubby came out and delivered my stuff for that.
Wow. Just those logistics. How long did it take for you to plan it?
So literally my husband gave me my tent for Christmas and then I started on the 1st of April. So what's that, 3 months?
Wow. That's incredible. And how was it? Was it a mental health journey for you?
It was the hardest but best thing I've ever done in my life, other than giving birth to my 2 children. No, it was incredible. You have to get back to grassroots and it's literally a game of survival. It's you against the world in the sense of you have to carry all your own gear. You have to cook all your own food. You have to set up your bed every night and pack it up every morning. And it's just you and the world. And the only way to get from point A to point B is for you to walk it. And no one's coming to help you. There's no lifeline. It's you doing it on your own. And for me, that was exactly what I needed.
Wow. I find it so incredible. How did your kids feel about it? Were they freaking out?
No, my kids are adults now, so they're 22 and 23, and they were just fully supportive of me. They have always been supportive of me, and they were surprised because they were like, "How is Mum going to go on this?" They know that I don't camp. They know that I love hiking, and they also knew I'd been in a really, really dark place. So they had their concerns, like everybody did. everybody who knew me was like, what the hell are you doing? Is this safe? Is this okay? I'm like, I have the support of my doctor and my psych. So at the moment, they're the two people that matter the most, and I'm going to do it. And I did.
Yeah. I know some people that have done a walk, but in a group, and they took a long time. They took their time to plan it and organize it because of the logistics of having such a big group do it. And then afterward, um, it sort of was a bit of an anticlimax. So they went into a bit of a dark place after the walk, because I think maybe they didn't have, that thing that they were always working towards and that sense of purpose. Did anything like that happen for you?
I thought about that at the beginning. So one of the
Yeah.
things that I had discovered in doing my research was that everybody who walks from Calamund to Albany, because Albany is on the south coast, is that people feel that there's a bit of an anticlimax when you get in, because you just get there and you sign the book and it's all over.
Yeah.
So I made the choice for two reasons. One being the weather, and I didn't want to be on the coast as it become closer to winter and the harsher weather. So I was walking away from the weather. I also wanted to walk north because for me it was like walking upward, walking towards my North Star. So mentally there was that. But most importantly, I wanted my family and friends there at the finish line.
Yeah.
And so I did. Like walking off the track, I actually had somebody from Buddy Up Australia meet me about 2Ks on the last leg, and so she helped walk me out, which was a great distraction. And then getting to the bottom of the last hill, I could see my family at the top. So I had my son there with my daughter and my sister on FaceTime because they live in Bali. I had one sister there with my mum on FaceTime. I had the other sister there with my dad on FaceTime. I had my husband there and I had a couple of friends there, and I had my two nieces holding up a sign welcoming me home. So just to walk into that was such a beautiful moment of one achievement for me that yes, I'd actually done it, but having those people celebrate with you. And then we all went to lunch, and then I had planned a couple of days in an Airbnb, beautiful little Airbnb I'd stayed in before, just to recuperate and then go and do all the girly things that I hadn't done for the last 2 months. So I think because I'd planned it to come off that in a celebratory, self-caring way, I don't think I had that slump, because when I went home after being in Perth, because we were living 2 hours away from Perth at the time, with hubby's work, I went into this flurry of cleaning and decluttering and realizing, because on the track you realize that you don't need much.
Yeah.
So I was able to just go into that mode. So
You had a new purpose, maybe.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think purpose, I was talking to my husband, I think about this yesterday or the day before, it's a common theme with everyone that I speak to on the podcast is that you really need to have something. It doesn't even matter what it is, but just something that'll get you out of bed in the morning or just keep you going and keep your mind active. And I think obviously for you, it's the walk and then all the decluttering. I had my own decluttering journey, which was so good. Oh my gosh, I'll never go back.
Me too.
But yeah, something, I think it's so important, right? With mental health is to have something that you're doing and to have some sort of purpose.
Yeah, and I think across life in general, we tend to do that. We're always booking that maybe one annual holiday for the year or something, which gives you something to work into, or a hobby that you're working towards. At the moment, the town I'm living in, we're creating, or they do a little pop-up shop for wildflower season. And so I've been busy creating stuff for that, because one of the things I learned to do in my mental health journey was draw mandalas or mandalas, depending on how you say it. And I do that. And for me, that's just so therapeutic. But just being able to create that for this pop-up shop, because while I was with WA Police, I wasn't able to sell them. So I was giving them all away. Yeah. And now I have an opportunity to share my art with other people. So I'm creating it with a purpose, but I'm finding it so therapeutic at the same time. So it's like a win-win.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. I love that idea of a wildflower pop-up. So after the Bib track, what do you do now to support your mental wellness?
So I have an amazing support network of people that I can call on, that I can actually, go to and have those conversations with and say, look, today's not a good day. Can I just run by this past you? But in general, daily practices of meditation, breath work, journaling. I go to yoga, even though we're in a really small town, there's a lady that does yoga here. Worst case scenario, I just do my own yoga practice. I have a gym set up in my backyard so that I can, at least do a workout because I love the movement to get rid of everything. And then I have a little sauna ice bath set up so I can do that as well. I drink cacao every day. So it's all those little things that actually set me up. And then I have the practices that I also then go to of things like drawing my mandalas or reading or bubble baths, like whatever is I feel necessary. And then where I can, I get over to the coast because I love being near water. So it's a half-hour drive to get me to the coast, but that half an hour sometimes is desperately needed. And I just walk for about 6 or 7 Ks on the beach.
Yeah. It is all those little things, and I live near the beach now. I didn't for a while, but I do. I grew up in the same place I live now. And the ocean, there's something about it, right? It's really healing.
It is, and it's my favourite place to be. And yeah, hubby knows that if I'm jumping in the car to go for a drive and go for a walk along the beach, that I'm not probably in a great place, but he knows that when I come back, I'll be better. So
I love that you know yourself, you're so in tune with what you need as well, like to be able to know that you can pick and choose like what you need on any particular day or however you're feeling, and to be able to go and do that, like it takes a great amount of emotional intelligence from within.
And I think that's the work that I've been doing, like all the work that led up to me walking on the bib track and trying all the different modalities. Like that for me was the missing link, is that I was trying all these different things, but no one thing was sticking. And then when I did the bib track, obviously it's just you and your pack. So you've got no connection really to the outside world and nothing available to you. You have to rely on your own instincts. And so some days that was getting into camp and literally lying down because I was stuffed and couldn't move. But I would ground every day. Like people would laugh at me like, Trudie, why haven't you got shoes on? Like you're walking around on, pea gravel and like bark mulch and the dirt and stuff, like hobbling. And they're like, put some shoes on. I'm like, no, I'm grounding. I'm letting the earth heal me. I would tree hug when I could on the bib track, like wherever I could and needed that extra energy. I would get up in the morning and do some yoga stretching or sit and do some breath work and meditation just to start my day. So it was all those things that I realized that it wasn't just one modality that I was going to be able to take with me. It was like all these little bits and take what I needed when I needed it. And that's what I'm doing now. Like I take what I need when I need it. So I think there's no one size fits all. There's no one miraculous thing that you're going to use to recover. It's just taking a little bit of everything when you need it.
Yeah, I agree. I'd like to refer to it as a tactical options model, like in the cops when you've got your firearm and your baton and all the things that you might need at any given time. Your mental health recovery should be exactly like that. You have your GP and your psych and your psychiatrist, but then you have all these other things that you can do to support your mental health.
I never looked at it that way, but I absolutely love that because it's so true. Like you are given all these tactical options and you draw on whichever one you need. Mental health is definitely the same. You have all these options and you just draw on whichever one at the time suits you.
Yeah, 100%. So have you written a book?
I have. So when I was on the Bibbulmun Track, I kept a journal and I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So I had this little guideline that I put at the front of the very first journal and said, what I was going to write every day or what I needed to write in every day. So it was literally like the day, the date, the time I walked, the camp I went to and from, the people I met, how my mind and body was, and what the hut was like. And so I did that every day, including whatever I dealt with on the day. And that was some pretty dark stuff. Like I went through a lot of different traumatic experiences right back to my childhood, dealing with mother-father wounds, dealing with work wounds because the police showed up lots of times along the track in various forms. And yeah, so I wrote about it, and I actually had a couple of people say to me, I'd love to hear about your experience. Are you going to write about it? And I'm like, well, I kind of already have. Here's my journals. And so I put my journals together in a manuscript, and it's been submitted to a couple of publishers. So fingers crossed. I don't really want to go down the route of self-publishing, even though I will if I have to, but I think my story warrants being out there, because the two people I gave to read it when it was completed was a business mentor, and she loved it. She goes, lots of women need to read this because there are so many relatable things. She laughed, she cried, she dealt with all the emotions reading it. But then I met a colleague on the track working in the opposite direction. So I walked from Albany to Kalamunda, but she'd walked Kalamunda to Albany. Didn't know her before that date, but we kept in touch after the track. And I said to her, could you just read my manuscript as, one, a fellow colleague, and two, as somebody who's walked to the track, because you will then be able to understand it. And she said to me, well, give me a little bit of time because I don't read. I only listen to audiobooks. And she couldn't believe that I'd done the whole track without any audio distraction, because she's like, what, no music, no podcast, no audiobooks? I'm like, nah, nothing. So she said to me, yeah, give me some time. She read it in 2 days and then went back and started walking the track again in the same direction that I'd walked it.
She did it twice.
Yeah, she didn't do it completely the second time. She actually came off the track for something else, but she walked probably a good 2/3 of it.
Wow.
Oh, but all just from reading my book.
Yeah.
Literally within the week of reading my book, she was back on the track.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I'm like, yeah, it's definitely got an appeal. It's definitely got a market for just helping people deal with that. There's an alternative way of dealing with trauma, and that we're not alone in the traumas that we deal with. Like everybody has a mother-father wound. Everybody has childhood trauma. Everybody is dealing with something.
Yeah, exactly right. So what's up for you next? I know you've got your podcast.
Yeah, I launched my podcast on the 1st of April. So it was like a year anniversary since starting the track. And that's called Talking Free. And I wanted it to be a place of sharing stories, because what I discovered through this whole process of PTS and within the agency was that I lost my voice and I didn't stand up for myself, and I didn't articulate what was going on, and I didn't want to allow that to happen again. So I was like, let's find a way to have a voice and continue having a voice. And the intro of my podcast says, is the girl who's always talked too much, because I am. I was like, I found the perfect platform to have my say. So I alternate between stories about my own life, things that are important to me, and having special guests. So it's a way of giving people a chance to have their say.
I've listened to a few episodes of your podcast and I really enjoyed it. One of the stories that stood out for me was I forgot her name, but the former police officer that had a stroke at 37. That was an incredible story. And her mindset afterwards, she said something like, I'm not glad that it happened to me, but I am, because of how I've grown from the whole experience and the recovery and everything like that. And, it's sort of how I feel about my own mental health journey. It's very different, obviously, than having a stroke and having to physically recover and do all those things. But, I am grateful that things have happened to me the way that they have, because I've been able to grow from it. And I think that your podcast is a perfect platform for people just to come and have a chat and share their stories without any filters or repercussions, of what might happen. So it's a great podcast, and I'll link to it in the show notes because I think people should listen to it too.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And I was surprised, starting off with something like that, you're like, is it going to work? Are people going to listen? And at the end of the day, it's not about how many listeners you get or how many downloads you get. It's like, I've given somebody the opportunity of sharing their story, which they otherwise wouldn't have shared. And if that story helps even just one person deal with whatever's going on in their life, like even the current episode, which is about a young girl who married her childhood sweetheart to only divorce him at 25 and go into a same-sex relationship. I released that during Pride Month and I didn't know. And it was like, it's perfect timing. It gave her a chance to tell her story, but I've sent it to a few friends who are also gay and they're like, amazing, love it. And it's helping them go, it's okay with what's going on in my life. So that's what it's all about, is just creating positive impact for and giving hope and inspiration and support to somebody else.
I totally agree. And, that's the same as me with my podcast. I just that one person, and if you can help one person, then that's what it's for.
100%.
Trudie, thank you so much for joining me today, for sharing your story, your incredible journey on the Bib track, and everything that's coming up for you. I truly wish you the best. I can't wait to read your book once it's published. Hopefully you'll have an audiobook, because I too don't like reading text a lot anymore. But thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. And like you, if somebody, just even one person, can take a little light of inspiration or motivation or just knowing that they're not alone, then I know that I've made a difference.
Absolutely. Thanks again. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. If you have, make sure to hit subscribe so you never miss any new ones. We release fresh content every Tuesday. And while you're there, take a moment to leave us a review. I would genuinely appreciate your thoughts. Don't forget to connect with me on Instagram and Facebook at Tactical Yoga Australia and share this episode with your friends, family and workmates to spread inspiration. Your support means the world. My name is Rosie Skeen. Join me again next week for another empowering and positive episode of Triumph Beyond Trauma. Until then, be kind to your mind and trust in the magic of your consistent and positive efforts. Triumph beyond your trauma is closer than you think. Have the best week.